Hello everyone, a very good afternoon. Welcome to the day 3 and the last day of the 16th edition of NASCOM TACI Annual Information Security Summit. I hope you all had a great experience during the last 2 days of summit. Welcome to the session on identity, central to fintech revolution, role of ID and ID verification in the volume and velocity of transaction processing, wherein we will be discussing and getting a lot of insight on few learning topics like how did the ID and ID verification helps to digitalize the payments in the country, role of identity in the payment system like UPI, future of digital identity in the decentralized world, and coming down to the next generation ID verification and authentication technique. Also, we will be getting some highlight from the policy development side. Also, like role of API and API players like who are the enabling digital identity verification today. So join your hands and welcome today's moderator and the chair for the particular session, Professor Dr. Janki Ram, Director IDBRT. Welcome, sir. Please welcome Ms. Monica Jasuja, Head of Product Management, Mobile Financial Solution, Comviva.
Hello.
Welcome, Ms. Monica. Please welcome Ms. Ashita, Associate Director, Policy, Cash Free. Please welcome Ms. Mridul Ochil, Senior Director, India Site Lead, Cybersecurity, Visa. Welcome, Ms. Mridul. Now, please welcome Mr. Satish Palgari, Chief Mobility Solution, NPCI.
Hello
Welcome,
all.
sir. Over to you, sir. Over to you, Dr. Jangram, sir.
Yeah, thank you, Ishan. Good afternoon and welcome to this very interesting panel on identity, central to fintech revolution. This topic is very close to my heart. When I joined at IDRBT from IIT Madras, I had series of discussions as part of the RBI Innovation Hub, And all the presentations at the Innovation Hub pointed to one problem, that is the KYC problem, Everybody uniformly pointed out the big pain point to customers in terms of the KYC, know your customer, And that looked like all the board members, uniformly felt this is a problem that needs to be solved. Now, the understanding of KYC over the period, in fact, improved for me after I started, going very deep on this. And I felt it is not KYC problem. It is actually a digital identity problem. As we move into the digital societies, everything is going to revolve around the digital identity. In fact, in my opinion, the digital identity as a concept needs to be developed very, very carefully because, digital identity could mean several things to several kinds of applications and sectors. So it's very, very important to understand digital identity. In my opinion, what Aadhaar did to the India stack, the digital identity will do a similar thing for the financial stack. And then, the whole financial sector, BFSI sector, not just to financial sector, but to the insurance sector and a whole lot of other sectors are going to be influenced once we actually get the digital identity concept right and build the stack on top of the digital identity. A whole lot of innovations are going to be, powered by such a thing. If we get the digital identity in a very frictionless, safe and secured fashion as part of the, whole ecosystem development. I'm very happy to say that I have an excellent panel with me, Miss Mridul, Senior Director, India Site Lead, Cybersecurity, Visa, and Satish Palagiri, Chief Mobility Solutions from NPCI, which is actually playing a pivotal role in terms of transforming the whole digital transaction space. Thanks to NPCI, I think now we are witnessing 4 billion plus transactions per month, I think India is becoming the leader in the digital transaction space. And we also have Monica, head of product management, mobile financial solution, Com Viva. Welcome to all of you, and also Asita, who is Associate Director Policy Cash Free. Welcome to all of you for this panel. I hope to have an enjoyable discussion with you, throwing a lot of light on this very fundamental concept of digital identity and how it is going to power the fintech revolution. We are also in the midst of fintech revolution. There's so many unicorns in the fintech space now in India. I think if we get this right, possibly we'll see a tipping point in terms of being able to build the kind of solutions, first of its kind solution for the world. So let me start with Monica on the digital identity. I think often this digital identity is misunderstood, in terms of KYC. You just look at, every bank trying to do a KYC, every, entity doing its own KYC, taking your documents. It is just about using the mobile phone and giving your, video feed. I guess the problem is very misunderstood thing. From your perspective, what do you think that, how this concept should be understood? And then, what kind of a digital identity we should be building, going forward?
So, sir, this is probably the most sir, this is most probably the most important question we are all trying to solve in financial services, but it kind of extends much beyond. When we talk about a digital identity of a user, essentially we are trying to identify the user as a unique person, plus obviously having the right kind of devices and verification mechanisms available in order to be able to identify not just the person, but also the person's persona in the digital world. And I think this is where things get very convoluted, because the minute there is a honeypot which actually stores this digital identity of a person, it becomes prone to a lot of hacks and obviously cybersecurity risks. But the more important thing that we need to identify, assuming that all our cybersecurity specialists will be able to take care of the security aspects, is how do you uniquely identify a user so that while ensuring the services stack that needs to be enabled to this user, we are not compromising on what the user's identity is. And now in the digital world, the identity is no longer a single number. It is associated with our entire digital footprint that we are leaving behind on everything that we do on the internet, which is in a connected world. Which is why this has probably become one of the biggest pillars of financial services, both on the enablement side and on the revenue aspect side. And which is why, while in India we have a hugely subsidized and commoditized market because of what we have on the back of the India stack, which is a public infrastructure for good, in many other geographies in the world, this is right now being developed as a revenue pillar for many companies that have a lot of consumers. So I think going forward, we have to think about digital identity much beyond what we are thinking in terms of the enablement layer, and thinking about both security aspects and the enablement aspects of the many use cases that it will create.
Excellent. In fact, what I feel is, at this different level, digital identity is more like our digital twin. It has all our information, and then, it could serve, not just as an identity, but something more, in terms of modeling our behavior, and quite a bit can be captured as part of digital identity. I think as part of digital societies, we will witness a completely different paradigm going forward. But I think it's sometime, we reach that point. At the moment, I see there are a lot of problems relating to security, and I would like to go to Mrudul to understand the concern of security relating to digital identity. This has happened with Aadhaar. If you look at it, there's also the Supreme Court judgment on, how the Aadhaar should be used, and then, the concerns relating to, customer consent and sharing of his information. All these are fundamental aspects. So in some sense, the current technologies where we just do the video KYC, taking the, the video feeds of the customer and storing them without really concern for the customer's security could lead to customer not having trust in these systems. Going forward, what do you think? How should we be balancing the digital identity with the primary concerns of privacy and security? What, in your opinion, we should be doing in that space?
Thank you, and Dr. Jankiram, for that question. And that's the need of the hour, as you mentioned, right? So now we definitely see the need of digital identity because there are definitely the reasons for it. When you see the KYC, the kind of paperwork we do, so we all establish the problem statement that yes, we need the digital identity, but it doesn't come for free, right? So it comes with the concerns of security and privacy. And now what is that we need to look at, as Monica mentioned, that before I enable a particular user a stack of services, first thing I have to establish, is it the right user? The authenticity, so authentication and authorization. First authenticate, and then whether that user is entitled to do this particular service. So we look at the different ways of biometric that we already have, right? Of course, username, password is a history now. We have to go to the different stages of multi-factor authentication, biometric. Is it still sufficient? And does biometric add a good user experience? That is what we have to see. So the thing that I'm going to talk about it, of course, privacy, security, and user experience. We should not go so much high on security as so that we hamper the user experience and we basically get away from user base to use it, right? Then we lost the purpose of it. So how do we balance the security and user experience is something the next generation of cyber security, zero trust authentication, we call it. I think you guys must be aware of that. Because of this pandemic, remote working, there is a new concept of zero trust security, cyber security, that we do not trust anyone. We don't trust the internal network, we don't trust external network, we never used to trust, we don't trust internal as well. So first thing, first principle of zero trust authentication or zero trust cyber security is validate anything that is connecting to your network, whether it's a device, user, anything. We don't trust anyone. You have to first verify and then we trust. So that verification for the next generation, what is coming is basically something called behavioral analytics, right? So which goes the security at a higher level. It's called the risk-based authentication. So system should detect automatically based on different characteristics of the user, where you are logging from, like what do you say, the location, the geographical location, the device that you are using, the fingerprints, the way you type it, you space it, different client footprint of your machine, different parameters. So there are like hundreds of parameters system can automatically detect and have a pattern on it, right? Once you detect, you can define a ML, machine learning pattern on it, and based on the behavior of the user, decide whether this user is a legit user or not. And suppose you find out of 100 parameters, 50 are flagging, like you logging from US right now, and in an hour you're logging in from India IP address. You can't do that, right? So basically system can flag based on different parameters of the behavior of the user, the risk factor for that user. And the moment risk factor is elevated, you can ask for multi-factor. Till then you're okay. Basically system is taking that overload of identifying the right user, verifying, and then trusting. So those kind of mechanisms should come more and more into system. I know right now all the financial institutions go for multi-factor, whether it is OTP, email, biometric, captcha, anything, but that's still not sufficient because the this generation of hackers and technology has proven that that can be broken, literally that can be breached. So we have to go more and more on the risk based authentication, risk intelligence, and behavioral based analytics. So I would just, with that, I will pause on this question. I have more to add in terms of how this digital identity is posing a risk of account takeover, but I'll hold on to that when the next question comes. I'll give chance to the other speakers.
Excellent. Excellent, Mridul. Yeah, I think one important point that you brought out is it's possible to have the digital signature identified by multiple other factors, especially looking at the patterns, and then understanding the digital signature of a person and being able to verify it in a very frictionless fashion will go a long way, because on
Exactly.
one side we want to have security, on the other side we also want to make it frictionless for the customer. If it is too much security, and he might not even get to the system, right?
Exactly. Yes.
So I think you brought out an excellent point. Let me move on to Satish. Satish is in this midst of this digital transactions revolution. We do understand, in terms of now, no, powering 4 billion plus transactions. One of the key things that you will always be worried about is the digital identities, and whether any money laundering and other stuff is happening as part of these 4 billion plus transactions. What do you think is some of the innovations that you should be looking at now, given that as Dilip says, very soon you will have a 1 billion transaction per day, not
Yeah.
right? So given that level of volume, what do you think should you be doing in terms of looking at innovations on the digital identity space itself?
Uh, Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for having me here. Uh, so we spoke about the user identity. Aadhaar is a platform that has given unique identity to every citizen of the country, right? So we worked very closely with Aadhaar when it was coming up, and then we parallelly developed products like Aadhaar Payments Bridge, Aadhaar Enabled Payment System, right? We processed good number of transactions. Government was able to reduce all the middlemen by using Aadhaar Payment Bridge. In the month of November, around 700 million plus transactions were processed in the system, right? But coming to, so when we talk about the user identity, there is more to it, right? With the technology advances, and then with 1.1 billion users, mobile users in the country, out of which 650 million is smartphone users, and then 450 million feature phone users, right? How do we enable payments for these users? And then what is the digital identity that we need to identify the user, and also we need to identify the device he's working on. Securely
Satish,
identify the device.
Satish,
Yeah.
can you adjust your microphone?
Yes,
There
sir.
is a suggestion. I think, yeah.
Right.
So if you
Is it
keep it
better, sir?
close, yeah, that's good.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
better. Go ahead.
So identifying the user present on that particular device is the crux of the UPI system, right? So, so what exactly has happened is sir, uh, today in the UPI ecosystem, uh, how do we get all these users to adapt to digital payments? Like UPI is simple, safe, and secure, and the simplicity has come up with all these mobile app providers, including Beam, providing the simple UI for the user to adapt to digital payments, right? Now, in addition to that, each and every transaction today, as of today, goes through the fraud risk management solution at NPCI, and every transaction is scored, and then basis the score only the transactions go through, right? This is the first part of it. The second part of it is the real potential, or the real security feature that is introduced in UPI is today we are able to uniquely identify that this particular user is there on this particular device. So that is the first factor. That is how. So that along with that, with the technology innovations, with the simple UI, people are able to adapt UPI, and we process more than, as you said, we process more than 4 billion transactions in UPI in the month of November, and then like the platform is there. Now we are looking at more and more use cases to be adopted by the platform, the players in the market, merchants, and other players. So the other thing is QR codes. Like so, in the UPI system, we are able to uniquely identify the merchants also, not only the users but also the merchants. Now we see every mom and pop stores is having the QR code, the quick reference codes. So where we also introduced secure QR codes, where any app, whenever it scans, it is able to identify that this is a secure QR, right? So that is these are the few things which are implemented in UPI, and to make the system secure. I'll pause here, sir.
Yeah. Thank you, Satish. I think yeah, we'll move forward to Ashita, and then I want to look at this question on See, we have things like CKYC, which is a central KYC, and also experimented what is called KYC Setu, to bridge the different things that people are developing and try to unify the digital identity. Now, see, what do you think going forward? Technologies like blockchain, AI, ML have to do to contribute to this concept of digital identity. I want to listen from you in terms of how do you look at these emerging technologies, trying to influence the way we actually build the digital identity concept.
Okay, so I think things like APIs or AI or ML are all playing a very important role today in new age identity verification. Like, say, when you have something like a neobank player, where you have a player that sits in the middle of the customers, the businesses, and the individuals who are using it, and you also have financial service providers at the back end, like the banks supporting it or the payment aggregators supporting it. So that's where all these new age technologies come in. Like, you could potentially create an identity verification layer, which an API aggregator or another identity intermediary would come in, which would utilize all these technologies. Like, say today, something like connected banking, where KYC happens, where there's sharing that is happening of the data between the player and the banks. This sharing happens via APIs. So in future, you could see that APIs which connect to the various databases, which connect to the account aggregator framework, which connect to other players like, say, the MCA, NSTL. All these databases have also released data. So you would have that come in. Then you would have all the new age cybersecurity technology that Mridul was talking about, which would help automated checks, automated verification. You also have a lot of digital checks that are coming in, like, say checking when a domain name was purchased, checking the product listing on the merchant website. These are new age checks which technology is enabling. So definitely it would help us go towards more digitized KYC checks and onboarding, as well as something like real-time KYC potentially in the future.
Excellent. Let me move on now with what I see as the kind of problems that we should be solving. Is a lot of talking. If you look at the digital identity, in my opinion, this is something that is part of any digital journey that we do, and not necessarily just the banking or restricted to banking or financial space. Now this becomes very interesting, because if you look at now, you do your KYC not just with banks or one regulator, but you also do with MCA if you are a director in a company. So you keep doing it also repeatedly, because each regulator has his own ways of saying when the identity, the liveness check has to happen, and then what other information is needed. And bigger problem is relating to health insurance. For example, if you are actually want health insurance, the kind of identity verification and other verification that goes with health information that needs to be verified is much different. And health going forward, health insurance is something that is basic to all of us. And there should be a way by which the identity is captured, and then digital identity is used for seamless movement across insurance providers. This is very, very important for all of us, because health insurance is going to become a vital thing for all of us. So given that we should be looking next 10 years, 15 years, at least 20 years, I guess the current concept of everyone dealing with this identity in an siloed fashion is not going to work out. That's my opinion, and I would like to go around the panel and then see what we should be doing about solving this digital identity in a holistic fashion. Not just looking at it from one application point of view or one sector point of view. I will first go to Monica with this question, and I will go around the panel and would like to hear your views on what we should be doing in this space. Monica.
So, Professor Janki Raman, I think we hit upon that sore spot right now where we are talking a lot about innovation and what we will be able to do. But then there are going to be silos that are getting created, which are obviously islands, which don't talk to each other, which is something that we've solved in payments because of interoperability. But the question that we need to ask ourselves is that when we are offering or enabling financial services or enabling any kind of services to uniquely identify a user, what parameters of data would we need and how can we depend on more areas or more opportunities for verifying the identity of this user. Therefore, similar to what we do for credit verification, where you have a credit bureau which becomes the source of truth, the question will become for an identity of a user, what will be the single source of truth? And I think the more ethical question is, do we need a single source of truth or not? Because if you look at the policy aspects and also a little bit of the policing aspects, it is very difficult to therefore have only one single identity which perpetrates and provides all such kind of information. The question will also become if there is an ability for the governments to act with both private as well as public enterprises to help collate this data, which actually helps services get to the consumers and businesses faster. You've mentioned very appropriately about an example where we are doing something which necessarily may not collate or directly talk back to other systems of government. So I don't think we already have an answer yet. However, I do know that from the technology point of view, we have the ability to be able to collate sources of information, therefore query multiple sources of information to identify and therefore validate, which is authenticate and authorize a particular transaction slash users services. So I think that is what we'll have to do going forward. But there is a very important role of the government here, and not just one government but global systems all across the world about being able to speak to each other, because an identity of a person in a particular local geography should not be different from the identity of a person in any local persona anywhere else in the world. So these are ethical questions that I don't think have answers for. However, we know that we have precedents in other forms of and systems which are available. Dr. Jankiraman, we are not able to hear you. Oh, I think he has dropped by probably internet disconnected. Maybe we can give it on pause for about 20-30 seconds.
Yeah, I think
till
we
he comes
lost
back.
him. Yeah, looks like.
In the meantime, maybe we can go around the panel and ask the same question by going
Yeah.
to Mridul.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea, Monica. Yes, I think this was a very interesting question. I like the question and I like your perspective also, Monica, on that. So I will keep the policy part aside right now, but I really like the concept about having one unique identity for a persona or for a person, right? In a system, in a different sectors, in a system. So if I go to bank, I go to my doctor, I go to my lawyer, I carry my identity. I'm the same person. So why do I have to carry different identification cards or mechanisms or something? And as I spoke before, right? If next generation of identity verification, authentication, authorization is going to be based on my behavior as a person, my characteristics, right? Where I log in from, my client, my biometrics, my characteristics, multiple things. It cannot be one. So if all of that combination of parameters, which is very unique to me as a person, going to be used in a system to authenticate myself and also to authorize to a particular service, then I think my authenticity should be same. I understand the second part, that authorization part, right? That should be different because authorization come when a particular person is entitled to do XYZ. So if I go to bank, I'm entitled to basically process XYZ services in bank. If I go to my healthcare system, I'm entitled to do something different. So entitlement and authorization can be different set based on the different sector, but my basic identity and my authenticity should be same based on my all behavioral biometric and whatever parameters that I carry, because I'm the same person and I am unique in the world. So that is what I wanted to distinguish little bit, to bring that concept about authentication and authorization, because authorization is different based on sector, but at least carry my identity, right? So let's say I go to the bank, I don't want to do any paperwork of KYC. I enter few of my characteristics by parameter. I type in something, you get my behavior, and based on that, you authenticate myself. Now, you might ask me a second question, whether I'm entitled to transfer 1 lakh rupees at that moment. That could be a different based on the banking sector or the financial sector, right? So that is what the concept I would like to bring in. But it's very, very interesting question to have the unique and consistent identity. We call it, right, in identity access management, we call it single sign on. And that is a concept we have to carry, not just in the IT sector, we have to carry all around in wherever that unique identity flows, which is a human being, right? So, with that, I will pass on the question to Satish.
Yeah. Hi. So look at this from the technology angle, right? So basically, other platform is there already, and there are various domains or various. So payments is one part of it, but others are also adopting or interfacing and then providing the services. So what I think is required is we need more and more fintech solutions on the at the far end, like not on the platform, enabling the APIs, providing the services what is required, and then the end use cases coming up by the fintechs. So today payments has adopted this very beautifully, right? And also there are other sectors, some of them are already using it. So when we talk about, so what is required is this platform being able to cater to.
Please go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So the platform being able to cater to all the use cases, and then so here identity is the main thing, right? Aadhaar does only identity, right? So now the use cases has to come on the other side. Like now the fintechs taking this role, right? How the way they're able to do it in payments, they also providing or getting into our other entities who are working in that domain, adopting these APIs and getting it digital is what is necessary of the hour, is what I feel.
Yeah, can we go to Monica? Sorry about this. I seems to have been pushed out.
So, Dr. Jankiram, actually, we did our rounds after Monica, myself, Satish. Now, I think it's with Ashita. We took your job. We took your job for a few seconds.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And then, sorry about the glitch, the internet seems to have got disconnected here,
No problem.
Yeah. So I think, just to continue our discussion a little further on this, what I see is, going forward, if you have to look for technology solutions, what we should be looking for is a digital identity that is created more by multiple trusted institutes, using blockchain, and the identity is well protected for the customer by using things like smart contract, where explicit consent is given by the customer before his data is shared or used by anyone else, In fact, at IDRBT, we are actually proposing to develop a blockchain-powered, identity, digital identity, which will not just do the KYC, but it will do the PYC as well, protect your customer. Because going forward with the data protection bills, this is going to be very, very important. It is not just that you ask the customer to give all kinds of documents and share everything with you, but then you don't guarantee any protection to him, And this is where I think, if you look at even the digital breaches, the data breaches, India seems to be third, most breached country in the recent report, right? Given that, I think we need to be, looking at a more, more trusted solution for the digital identity problem. Again, I would like to go around, the panel to see, what their views on such a solution, and how we should be building such solutions, I'll go to Satish to start with this time, and then, go around the panel.
Sir, I think that's a great initiative, right? So today, we have identity. Aadhaar is one part of it, and then today DG sign is there, and others are there. But what you told is very futuristic, right? So that the DLT world is evolving now, right? And this is the right time to venture into that area where a consent based, I think our panel also expressed this before, like saying that the customer giving the consent at that point of time, right? It's not an open consent, is data being theft or is PI details being taken away. So this kind of system will actually provide much more, will get many more use cases into the market, and also that is going to secure the customer to the core. I think it's a very good initiative, and then I think we should be. I think it should come good.
Sure, yeah, that's nice. Yeah, so Asita, and then I would like to hear your views on it, especially on the kind of trusted parties that should be part of this digital identity space management.
Okay, all right. So it definitely sounds very interesting. Like Satish said, blockchain is the
Again, did we disconnect? Okay.
I think
She
I
today
think
looks like
Ashita.
she has gone up. Yeah, Monica, can you go ahead? I think meanwhile, if she comes back, we will be able to get back to her.
So, Professor Janakiraman, this question is important, but I will bring this back to what Satish said and just segue. Okay, Ashita is back. She lost her chance in the earlier round also. Ashita, over to you.
Okay, I'm sorry, having network issues here. But yeah, I think blockchain is the future. A lot of innovation happening in that space. Like we do have some groundwork that is set for KYC sharing via, say, Section 14 of the RBI KYC direction that permits it. Or say the account aggregator framework that is established now. So that gives a potential to explore even KYC sharing via the account aggregator framework, either the data schema, either share the data via the schemas or use the account aggregator consent as a KYC proxy and CKYC, like you mentioned. These are some of the options that are already in place or which can be explored. So I think adding blockchain to the list, given its reputation for security and something that is a more transparent way also to ensure that it is authentic. So I think that sounds extremely interesting. What kind of players should be a part of it? There are a lot of identity verification players right now. Whether you have different models, you have a regulated entity like the account aggregator, and you also have a lot of fintech players in the middle. So I think we would need to figure out what exactly are the risks involved and how would we need to protect the data that is collected. Where would it be stored? Like say the account aggregator framework, if you look at it, they are not allowed to store the data. They are only a conduit. So can you have a model like that? So I think we would need to understand what are the players that would come in. Definitely fintech players would come in the middle and would want to leverage something like this. But from a security perspective, privacy perspective, what are the safeguards to be kept in place? We'll need to think about that.
Sure, excellent, Asita. Monica, before you answer, I also want you to consider this question from one of the audience, Funny Raj, who actually is asking, is that also important? Excellent question, in fact. He's asking the question on whether we should also have a private network or, a dedicated network, which should handle these things, right? So, if you can answer this along with the other question that I put, that will be nice.
So, Professor Janakiraman, this is an excellent question, and I wanted to also bring this back to our previous. So, right now we have modern technology stacks that are able to have a bus of information going, and you can basically ride on, hop on, or hop off the bus basis whenever and whatever information is needed. So, what is that important analogy can be taken a little further, and we can actually think about collating or having this continuous system of information that is made available to various participants or stopovers in that particular bus. The question really will be, and I think this is more is it isn't a policing question or a moral policing question, is who should be that custodian. Normally in a payment system you will have central banks in the and obviously managed by governments, which take control. In this particular kind of architecture where there are various entities involved, how do you create a system both on the policy side, secondly on the regulation side, and thirdly on the implementation, so that the protocols are standard and are understood by all participants. I think what Funny is explaining, and he's drawing the example of an ATM switch, is exactly that kind of infrastructure. When we realized the need to actually have it, everything was therefore managed by a central switch. I think those are the things that we need to think about as these infrastructures get developed all across the world. So would completely agree. One, however, thing is, Professor Jankiraman, I know Ashita mentioned this. I would love to get your views on this as well. Who manages this? How do you regulate? Because when fintechs and innovative players come into the system, normally innovation precedes regulation. So the question will be, how does regulation always have to catch up? Or do we actually create a regulatory framework that others can start participating in to disseminate these services?
Sure, regulation in some sense is always reactive, it's not proactive, because the technology should move forward and create systems, and regulation should step in if there are things that are not going correctly as should be going. So from that sense, regulation is always going to be reactive, in my opinion. In this particular case, who are the people who should be managing, in whom actually we have trust? The parties that we trust should be, for example, IDRBT could be one party, the MIT could be another party, some of the regulators could be party to it. Why this becomes very important? Because if you look at your mutual funds or any stock market, investments versus, everything gets connected to your identity in some sense. So from that perspective, I think we need to bring in the regulator suddenly on board, and then, there should be a framework that should come in. But in my opinion, if you are able to build it, the regulation anyway, will follow it, right? That's my take on that. So let me go to Mrudul and then, see what her views on this, right? Yeah.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Janki Raman. I'm just jumping to that question first that we were just talking about. So, in my opinion, no matter how much, if we think from the security and privacy perspective, and we really want to have a parallel network, because the question is saying, should we really rely on the common network infrastructure, open network, the internet that we use, everybody uses, than using something private for fintech, right, for ATM network? But in my opinion, no matter what you do, you need to have same kind of security, same level of privacy security, precautions and guardrails in any network that you need. So instead of creating multiple parallel networks, the network that we have today, our viewpoint should be, how do I make that as a secure network? Because you can't control people to be only on that private network, and how many private networks you will create. That's why when I started talking, right, there is a concept about the zero trust cybersecurity, which is no network is secure. No network is secure. No user or no device, no entity is trusted unless it is proven its identity. So I would go to the viewpoint of making sure whatever network we are in, that is the network everybody is going to use. And our pandemic has showed that we have to rely on the networks like that. Make that network itself completely secure, having any zero loopholes, any zero vulnerabilities, any attack surface open on this network. So we should look at the next generation of technology to bring those concepts: zero trust authentication, zero trust cybersecurity. Everything is zero trust. That means I start with no trust. I have to have guardrails. I have to have mechanisms to validate digitally using a lot of latest technologies, whether it is ML, AI patterns, risk-based authentication, or anything. But that's my take on that question. And I just wanted to just give one viewpoint on your earlier question, Doctor, about the players like blockchain and decentralized system to make use of them to participate in digital identity, right? I think, as Ashita mentioned, we are very early in that space, though I think blockchain technologies has been there around. But to come to this conclusion about how secure they are, how securely they use the user information, it's all crypto based, right? It's all cryptography based. But we don't know whether the decentralized system is secure enough to carry my identity from one system to another, to just make it, completely speed enough or fast enough. So those are very early spaces. We really need to wait the security aspect of it and privacy aspect of it before we call out a yes, this is especially for blockchain, right? Yes, this is our next generation of system for identity verification. I
Yeah,
don't think
yeah,
I'm
Mridul,
comfortable.
just to
Yeah.
clarify, I think these are actually permission blockchain systems, and
Okay.
these systems are only maintained by trusted nodes. It is not maintained by untrusted nodes.
Okay.
So in that sense, I think all these questions can be answered along with smart contracts. You will be
Sure.
able to actually allow the user to give consent, and then
Okay.
record that consent also in a secured fashion in the blockchain. In
Yes.
my
Okay.
opinion, these are well understood. And then to wrap up this panel, I think we had just I think ran out of time now. I think going on your zero trust and everything being zero, I also want to bring you to your attention this zero knowledge proofs, which are becoming very, very important way of actually sharing the information by the customer to someone else without really disclosing anything. You prove your identity but not disclose anything significant to them. This is
Right.
becoming a very important technology. In my opinion, I think this will become integral part of digital identity system. Excellent panel. I also want to thank Ishan for actually bringing all of us together. This is one panel where I notice that women outnumber men, which is a very great thing. Thanks for putting up such a panel for the first time. So where this was very rightly addressed. The gender part of it has been rightly addressed, and then thanks to all the panelists for expressing so clearly their views on the subject. And suddenly I look forward to interacting with you again offline and take this conversation forward. Back to you, Ishan.
First of all, many thanks to Dr. Jankiram sir for chairing and moderating this session, and thanks a lot each and every panelist for joining, taking out such a time for the such an insightful session. Thanks a lot, Madhu. Thanks, Monica. Thanks, Mr. Satish, and thanks, Ashita. Thanks a
Thank
lot.
you.
Looking forward for the future events as well. Thanks.